What if the person stalking you knew your every move, even before you did? Imagine being watched by someone you trust. Stick around to find out who's lurking in Sarah's shadows. Happy Halloween. Chapter 1. A Night of Joy and Frights. It was Halloween evening in Las Vegas, a city where every night felt like a masquerade of sorts. The cityscape was more animated than usual, and the neighborhoods were alive with children in costumes, adults sipping themed cocktails, and houses draped in spiderwebs and skeleton. Sarah, a 22-year-old college student, was babysitting Jason and Emily, siblings aged 10 and 8. She had been their go-to babysitter for nearly 2 years, watching them grow from timid kids to bubbly preteens. This year, Halloween fell on a weekend, making it even more exciting for the kids and, unfortunately, for those with darker intentions. The local news had been abuzz with reminders of the notorious Halloween murderer, an unidentified person who committed heinous crimes every Halloween for the past 3 years. Police ramped up their efforts with increased patrols and encouraged parents and guardians to accompany children while trick or treating. Sarah had been hesitant to take the kids out, but didn't want to disappoint them. To compromise, she mapped out a short, well-populated route that would keep them close to home and within the boundaries of the gated community they lived in. "We're going to have the best Halloween ever, Sarah. Mom and Dad even got us the costumes we wanted," Emily chirped, her face glowing under her fairy princess makeup. Jason, ever the adventurer, was dressed as a pirate, complete with a cardboard sword. "Aw, we be plundering lots o' candies tonight." Sarah chuckled at their enthusiasm. She was dressed as a superhero, a costume she picked out last minute, but one that the kids approved of. Before setting off, Sarah did a final check, mobile phones fully charged, a small flashlight, and a can of pepper spray discreetly tucked into her bag. She looked at the excited faces of Jason and Emily and pushed aside her reservations. Tonight was about making wonderful memories for them, and she was determined to do just that. They stepped out into the cooler desert air, their spirits high. The streets were full of Halloween revelers, kids dashing from door to door, parents in tow, and some homes going all out with their decorations, turning their front yards into haunted houses. Sarah followed her planned route diligently, and everything was going as well as one could hope. They were halfway through when Sarah felt her phone vibrate. It was a text message. "Happy Halloween, Sarah." She didn't recognize the number and assumed it was a misplaced text. Shrugging it off, they moved to the next house, where a young couple was distributing king-sized candy bars. Just as Jason and Emily rushed towards their next treasure, Sarah noticed a figure standing across the street. Clad in a Grim Reaper costume, the figure stood ominously still, its gaze fixed on them. A chill ran down her spine. Chapter 2. Disquieting Moments. Sarah quickly snapped back to reality as she heard Emily's joyous laughter. The little girl was proudly showing off the king-sized candy bar she had just received. Jason was already negotiating with her to trade it for some of his smaller treats. For a fleeting moment, Sarah debated whether to immediately head home. But seeing the pure joy in Jason and Emily's faces, she hesitated. She didn't want to alarm them, nor did she want to ruin their Halloween night over what could simply be an innocent bystander, enjoying the holiday spirit in a Grim Reaper costume. "Okay, 2 more houses, and then we go back. Deal?" Sarah proposed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Deal," Jason and Emily agreed, thrilled at the prospect of more candy. As they approached the next house, Sarah couldn't help but glance back. To her relief, the Grim Reaper figure was gone. Perhaps it had been her imagination, fueled by the spooky atmosphere of Halloween and the disturbing text message she had received. But then, her phone buzzed again. Don't you want to play a game, Sarah? The unknown number again. Her heart pounded in her chest as she deliberated her next move. This was no random message. Someone was watching her, following her, and that made the decision for her. Change of plans, kiddos. Let's head to the park for a bit. How does that sound? Sarah's voice quivered slightly as she spoke, hoping the kids wouldn't notice. Awesome, Emily exclaimed, always excited for a trip to the park. Yeah, I guess that could be fun, Jason added, attempting to play it cool. Sarah felt a surge of guilt for not being entirely honest with them, but their safety was her priority. Park was well lit and usually populated, even at night, especially on Halloween. She reasoned it would be a safer option until she could figure out what to do next. As they made their way to the park, Sarah took the opportunity to text the children's parents about their slight change in plans. She didn't mention the creepy texts or the figure she'd seen. No point in worrying them unnecessarily when they were out enjoying their anniversary dinner. The park was buzzing with activity. Families and friends were gathered around, some in costumes, some not. There was a sense of community in the air, and for a moment, Sarah felt a bit more at ease. But just as they found an empty bench and started going through their candy, Sarah felt her phone vibrate yet again. Nice change of scenery. See you next Halloween. Her heart sank. She scanned the crowd frantically, searching for any sign of the Grim Reaper. But he was nowhere to be found. And that's when she decided enough was enough. It was time to go home.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying these spine-chilling stories, do me a favor. Hit that like button and smash subscribe. It helps to keep the horrors coming your way. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a scare. Thanks for watching.
Chapter 3, Return and Revelations. The walk back home felt much longer than Sarah had remembered. Every sound, every footstep echoing in the distance seemed to intensify her fear. Jason and Emily, who had started to sense the tension, remained unusually quiet. When they finally arrived home, Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. The familiar surroundings of the house offered a sanctuary, albeit a temporary one. She quickly locked the door behind them. Okay, kids, why don't you both sort through your candies in the living room? Maybe even start some of your candy trades, Sarah suggested, trying to keep the atmosphere light. As Jason and Emily made themselves comfortable on the living room rug, their young faces illuminated by the glow of a jack-o'-lantern, Sarah retreated to the kitchen. She needed a moment to think, to process the events of the evening. She pulled out her phone and hesitated. Should she call the police? What would she even tell them? That she received a couple of text messages and saw someone in a Halloween costume in a city where bizarre outfits were the norm? It wouldn't be enough. Instead, she decided to send a text to Jennifer and Mark, Jason and Emily's parents. Hey, we're back home. Kids had fun, but some strange things happened. We'll fill you in when you get back. Please, hurry. As she put down her phone, she heard Emily's voice from the living room, tinged with curiosity. Sarah, who's that outside the window? A jolt of fear shot through her. She rushed to the living room and saw Emily pointing at the window. Her eyes followed the direction of Emily's finger, half expecting to see the Grim Reaper figure staring back at her. But there was no one. You probably saw a passerby, or maybe it was just a shadow, Sarah said, not quite convinced of her own explanation. But it looked like he was wearing a hood, like the Grim Reaper, Emily insisted. Jason chimed in. Maybe it was just someone from the neighborhood playing a prank. You know how Halloween is. Sarah forced a smile. Right, probably just a Halloween prank. Just then, her phone buzzed again. A message from the unknown number. You're good at keeping secrets, Sarah, but how long can you keep them? The walls seemed to close in on her. Whoever was doing this knew she was keeping the situation from the kids. It was a calculated, psychological game, and she had become an unwilling participant. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door unlocking. It was Jennifer and Mark, back from their dinner. As she greeted them, Sarah knew she had a lot to explain. But even as she prepared to recount the evening's unsettling events, a dreadful thought crept into her mind. Would revealing the truth put them all in greater danger? The mood had shifted irrevocably. The night that started as a joyful Halloween celebration had turned into something far more sinister. Chapter 4: Unveiling the Unthinkable. Jennifer and Mark listened intently as Sarah recounted the evening's unsettling events. Their eyes widened in disbelief and concern, their earlier cheerful demeanor replaced by palpable tension. "Sarah, why didn't you call us immediately? Or the police?" Jennifer's voice quivered as she spoke. "I didn't want to alarm you or ruin your anniversary dinner," Sarah hesitated. "And honestly, I didn't know if the police would take it seriously enough." Mark interjected. "We need to call the police now, no question about it." Just as Mark reached for his phone, Sarah's buzzed again. She looked at the screen and her heart sank. "Tell anyone and you'll regret it." The room suddenly felt cold, as if the walls themselves were listening. Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Should she reveal this latest message or keep it to herself? Mark dialed 911 and began explaining the situation to the dispatcher. Meanwhile, Sarah felt a growing unease. As much as she wanted to tell them about the last text, something held her back. It was as if a voice in her head was warning her of the grave consequences. After hanging up, Mark assured everyone, "The police will be here shortly to take our statements and look into the matter." Emily, who had been quietly observing, broke her silence. "Does this mean we can't go trick or treating next year?" Jason, trying to act more mature, scolded her. "Seriously, Emily? That's what you're worried about?" Sarah quickly intervened, trying to alleviate the mounting tension. "Let's not worry about next year. Let's focus on staying safe tonight." Just then, the doorbell rang. A wave of relief washed over Sarah. That must be the police, she thought. Mark opened the door, only to find a small package on the doormat. It was wrapped in black paper and adorned with a red ribbon. No one was in sight. As Mark cautiously picked it up, Sarah's phone buzzed once more. "Open it. Happy Halloween." The atmosphere grew stifling as Mark carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a small, ornate box. With bated breath, he opened it. A chilling laugh erupted from the box, a recorded cackle that sent shivers down everyone's spine. It was a Halloween prank toy, but under the circumstances, it was anything but amusing. Sarah finally decided to show the last text message to Mark and Jennifer. The color drained from their faces as they read it. They all realized the same unsettling truth. The person stalking Sarah had just been at their doorstep, leaving behind not just a package, but a terrifying promise of what could happen next. Chapter 5: The Tipping Point. Sarah sat in the living room, the chilling laugh from the prank box still echoing in her ears. Mark and Jennifer had ushered the kids upstairs, reminding them to stay in their rooms until they said otherwise. They had done so reluctantly, their youthful excitement dampened by the thick air of tension that hung in the room. Mark returned from upstairs and confirmed, "The kids are safe and secure, but I think it's time we consider a plan of action." Before anyone could speak, there was another knock at the door. This time, it was the police. 2 officers, both stern-faced but empathetic, entered the room. "We understand you've had a distressing evening," the taller one began, flipping open his notepad. As Mark and Jennifer explained the situation, Sarah's phone, which she had placed on the coffee table, buzzed once more. The room went quiet. "You can trust no one, Sarah, not even the police." Sarah hesitated for a moment, and then showed the message to the officers. "This just came in," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. The officers exchanged a worried glance. "We'll immediately look into this," the shorter one assured. "But, for tonight, would you consider staying somewhere else? Somewhere this person wouldn't know about?" Sarah looked at Mark and Jennifer, who both nodded in agreement. "We have a cabin about an hour away," Mark suggested. "It might be the safest option right now." With no time to lose, Sarah packed a quick bag, as did Mark and Jennifer. Despite the urgency, the house seemed to be closing in on Sarah, each tick of the clock amplifying her dread. As they all got into the car, Mark took a moment to address the gravity of the situation. "We're going to be okay," he said, though it was unclear if he was trying to reassure his family or himself. The drive to the cabin was silent, except for the low hum of the car's engine and the occasional crackle of the police radio. They reached the isolated cabin, its looming silhouette barely visible in the moonlight. Mark quickly unlocked the door and ushered everyone inside. Just as Sarah began to feel a sense of security, her phone buzzed again. Her hands trembling, she looked at the screen. "See you next Halloween, Sarah. The game has just begun." For a moment, she felt paralyzed. The message was clear. She had escaped danger for now, but the threat remained, lurking in the shadows until the next Halloween. Chapter 6, the next morning. As the first rays of the sun crept through the gaps in the curtains, the cabin felt less menacing, almost serene. Sarah awoke from a restless sleep, her dreams populated by faceless figures and ominous messages. Despite the light of day, she knew that the events of the previous night were far from a mere nightmare. Downstairs, Mark was already making coffee, the aroma filling the cabin. Jennifer joined him, looking as if she had hardly slept. "Morning," Sarah greeted, forcing a smile. "How did the kids sleep?" "As well as can be expected," Jennifer replied. "We told them we came here for an impromptu adventure. We'll have to explain everything eventually, but for now, it's better they don't know the full extent." The police had called earlier, letting them know that their house appeared secure and that they were continuing the investigation. Still, the unknown tormentor remained at large, a chilling thought that none of them could shake off. Just as they started discussing their plans for the day, Sarah's phone buzzed. She froze for a moment, afraid to look, but then saw it was a message from her roommate, Kate. "Hey, are you okay? Saw some weird guy hanging around your apartment building last night." Sarah's heart sank. The implication was horrifyingly clear. Whoever was stalking her knew where she lived. The feeling of being trapped intensified, closing in from all sides. Mark, noticing her expression, asked, "What's wrong?" Sarah showed him the text. The room went silent. "We need to involve your roommate in the police report," Jennifer suggested, her voice shaky. Just then, another message appeared on Sarah's phone from the unknown number. "You can run, but you can't hide, Sarah. Until next Halloween." The message was a direct challenge, a gauntlet thrown. It was clear now that the ordeal was far from over. It was merely paused, like the calm eye at the center of a storm. "Should we stay here longer?" Mark suggested, his voice tinged with desperation. Sarah pondered for a moment and then spoke. "No, hiding is not a solution. We need to face this head on, involve the police, and ensure our homes are secure. This person wants us to live in fear. We can't let that happen." Everyone nodded, acknowledging the grim but resolute path ahead. They packed their bags and locked up the cabin, knowing they were returning to an altered reality. As they drove back, each lost in their thoughts, Sarah couldn't help but feel that the events of this Halloween would haunt her for the rest of her life. Chapter 7, Behind the Mask. 2 weeks had passed since that dreadful Halloween night, and Sarah felt the strain of constant vigilance. Police had increased patrols in her area, but there were no new leads. Her friends and family tried to resume a sense of normalcy, yet a cloud of unease lingered over everything. One evening, while she was studying in the library, Sarah received an email notification. Expecting it to be from her professors, she opened it only to find a message from an unknown sender. Sarah, I hope you're not feeling too lonely. I'm always watching you. Attached was a picture, a blurry image taken from a distance, capturing Sarah in the library, engrossed in her books. Her pulse quickened, and a cold sweat broke out. She immediately left the library, unable to shake off the feeling of being observed. She called Mark and Jennifer, who advised her to come to their house immediately. Sarah arrived, her hands shaking as she held her phone, showing them the email. "This is intolerable," Jennifer said, visibly agitated. "We're going back to the police station, and we won't leave until they take this seriously." Upon their arrival, the police admitted the gravity of the situation. With the photographic evidence, it was clear that the stalker had escalated their tactics. "We'll upgrade this case to high priority," assured the detective. "And we're assigning an officer to keep an eye on your place until we catch this person." As they returned home, Sarah felt a fraction safer, but knew that until her stalker was identified, she would never be entirely at ease. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah started taking self-defense classes, a tacit admission that she might have to protect herself physically. She also installed security cameras in her apartment. It was around this time that she received another message, this time via a letter slipped under her door. "Do you feel safe behind your cameras, Sarah? You should know, a lens can work both ways." Sarah felt her heart drop into her stomach. The handwriting was shaky, almost like the letters were dancing in a chilling rhythm. She promptly turned the letter over to the police. "We'll analyze this for fingerprints," said the detective. "The level of obsession here suggests this isn't a random act. It's possible you may know this person, even if just superficially." That thought disturbed Sarah the most. The notion that her stalker might be someone she knew. As Thanksgiving approached, Sarah considered the things she was grateful for: her supportive family, her loyal friends, her own resilience. Yet, the sense of peace that should come with gratitude was tainted by the ongoing threat that loomed over her life. Until this person is caught, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and every other day is just a date on a calendar, she thought, grappling with her reality. Chapter 8. The Web Tightens. Thanksgiving was a muted affair, the tension palpable despite everyone's attempts at normal conversation. Sarah tried to focus on the moment, the warmth of being around her family, yet her thoughts kept drifting to the unsettling messages she'd been receiving. Her cousin, Emily, who had been relatively quiet during dinner, finally spoke up. "Sarah, I've noticed you've been a bit off today. Is everything all right?" Sarah hesitated. How much should she reveal? But looking into Emily's concerned eyes, she felt the burden of carrying her secret alone. "I've been getting messages and threats from an unknown person," Sarah confessed. "The police are involved, but they haven't found the person yet." The room went quiet, the jovial atmosphere replaced by one of grave concern. "That's terrifying, Sarah," Emily said. "If there's anything we can do to help, please let us know." Later that night, after the family had left and Sarah returned to her apartment, she found another letter tucked in her mailbox. Her hands shook as she read the familiar, shaky handwriting. "Did you enjoy your Thanksgiving, Sarah?" "I did. I had a great view." The realization that her stalker had been close enough to observe her during a family gathering sent a shiver down her spine. She immediately called the detective handling her case. The next morning, the police had an emergency meeting to discuss Sarah's situation. "We need to treat this as a high-risk stalking case," the detective said. "The individual is escalating. We should also explore connections within her close circles, friends, family, acquaintances. Sarah was brought in for questioning to build a more comprehensive profile of possible suspects. She racked her brain for anyone who might bear a grudge or have displayed obsessive tendencies, but no one fit the bill. Days later, Sarah was reviewing footage from her security cameras when she spotted something odd, a shadow moving past her window. She replayed the video, enhancing the image as much as she could. Although it was impossible to make out a face, the silhouette seemed vaguely familiar. Just then, her phone buzzed. "I hope you're finding the footage interesting. I always aim to be camera ready." The message left her frozen. Her stalker had access to her camera feeds. The violation of her privacy was total and complete. The unknown person always one step ahead of her and the police. Sarah felt like a puppet in a malevolent play, the strings pulled by an invisible hand tightening the web around her. Chapter 9. The Trap. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, the atmosphere in Sarah's world was stifling. Her stalker remained elusive, the threats ever increasing. To make matters worse, the person seemed to be privy to her conversations, her movements, and her thoughts, almost as if he or she was omnipresent. Determined not to succumb to despair, Sarah began brainstorming ways to turn the tables. If this person knows everything about me, maybe there's a way to use that against them, she thought. With the police coming up empty-handed, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Together with Mark and Jennifer, Sarah devised a plan. They would set a trap to catch the stalker. They chose the upcoming Christmas party at Mark and Jennifer's home as the setting. Sarah would act normal, posting about the event on social media, ensuring the stalker would know. Hidden cameras would be placed around the property, each disguised so well that even a discerning eye would miss them. As guests arrived at the party, each had to grapple with the unsaid tension. Any one of them could be Sarah's tormentor. Despite the festive decorations and cheerful music, a feeling of unease permeated the room. Midway through the evening, Sarah received a text message. "Beautiful party, Sarah. Enjoy it while you can." She discreetly signaled Mark and Jennifer, and they began monitoring the camera feeds from a separate room. Minutes turned into hours, but there was no sign of unusual activity. Just as they were about to lose hope, one of the cameras picked up a masked figure skulking near the back door of the house. Mark immediately called the police, who were on standby for this very scenario. Before they could arrive, however, the figure seemed to sense that something was amiss. He looked directly at the camera, as if peering into Sarah's soul, and vanished into the darkness. When the police arrived, they scoured the area but found no one. Despite the setback, they managed to capture a clear image of the masked individual from the camera footage. "The net is closing in," the detective assured Sarah. "With this evidence, we can intensify our investigation and, hopefully, unmask this individual soon." Sarah returned to the party, a mixture of relief and disappointment washing over her. Tonight had been a small victory, but the war was far from won. As she looked around at her friends and family, she couldn't help but wonder, was her tormentor among them? And if so, how could she ever feel safe again? Chapter 10. Unmasked. As the days grew colder and the year neared its end, Sarah felt as if she was living in a waking nightmare. Despite their best efforts, the police were no closer to identifying her stalker, who seemed to be growing bolder with each passing day. It was a week before New Year's when Sarah received a package with no return address. Inside was a mask, a grotesque representation of a human face twisted in agony. Accompanying it was a note, "Looking forward to seeing you wear this." That was the last straw. Sarah felt her strength collapse, and for the first time, she broke down in tears. It was as if the mask was a mirror, reflecting the torment and fear that had gripped her life. When she showed it to the detective, He knew they were running out of time. "We need to act now," he said. "We're going to put you under police protection until we catch this individual." The days under protection felt like a blur, a constant cycle of unfamiliar faces and routines as the police moved her from one safe house to another. And then, finally, a break in the case came. "We've identified a suspect," the detective announced. "Someone from your extended family, believe it or not. We've apprehended him, and you're safe now." Sarah felt a flood of emotions: relief, horror, disbelief. "Who is it?" she asked. When the detective revealed the name, Sarah felt her world collapse. It was a relative, someone she had known her entire life, someone who had been at all the family gatherings, holidays, and birthdays. The mask of normalcy had been ripped off, revealing the monster beneath. "Why?" was all Sarah could ask when she faced him during the trial. The man shrugged, a hollow look in his eyes. "I felt connected to you in a way I can't explain. It was as if you were the missing piece in my life, and I would do anything to claim you." Sarah shuddered, realizing the depth of his delusion. As he was led away to serve his sentence, she felt the weight of the past months lift off her shoulders, yet her heart was heavy with the betrayal. The experience had scarred her, but it had also made her resilient. As she stepped into the new year, Sarah knew that she had survived the darkest chapter of her life and emerged stronger. The mask had been lifted, the tormentor unmasked, but the journey to reclaim her peace was just beginning. The end.